Jody, could you email me the YouTube link?
Yep. Oh yeah, Mark,
Oh,
can you keep a watch for
You to put it in the chat. I am on it.
okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. The August 13th meeting of the Millis School Committee. My name is Carrie Roach. I'm the current chair. I will start by saying this meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on YouTube. So normally we start off with open session. The teachers have asked to make a statement. Oh my gosh, I hear an echo. I hear myself talking. Can you guys go on mute?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I hear an echo. Perfect. And actually, I skipped over taking attendance, which was good to hear myself. So we'll start by attendance. Robin Briggs.
Here.
Stephen Catalano.
Here.
Mark Conroy.
Here.
Janice Gibbons.
Here.
Superintendent. She's here. Thumbs up. And teacher rep, we have no teacher rep or student reps. So like I just said, we're going to start with open session. The teachers union asked to make a statement. Marianne had some scheduling conflicts, so she's going to join about 7:30. So once she gets on, wherever we are in the action items, we'll move to her and let her read the teacher statements. So on our agenda today, we have a bunch of action items to get through. Then we'll go to a superintendent's report. And then part of the chairman's report, I will read a statement or give an update on our reopening plans. And then we are going to adjourn to executive session to talk about the superintendent's search. So let's get started. Our first action item is consideration to approve the 8/6 meeting minutes.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Briggs.
I move that we approve the August 4th school committee meeting minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, the meeting occurred on August 6th. It was
Yes,
originally scheduled for the 4th, but the meeting actually occurred on the 6th.
Yes. So it's the August 6th meeting minutes. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So now we have the consideration for the third reading of the revised policy 1.16.1 sexual harassment Title IX policy.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gibbons.
I make a motion for to move forward with the third reading of the Millis Sexual Harassment Title IX Policy 1.16.1.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Please go ahead.
Want me to
Denise, do you
start,
want
Steve?
Start?
Yeah.
I'll start.
Okay. Good.
Millis Public Schools Sexual Harassment Title IX Policy 1.16.1. Definitions. In the employment context, sexual advances and requests for sexual favors and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitute sexual harassment under Massachusetts law when submission to such conduct is either made explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's advancement, quid pro quo harassment. Submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as the basis for employment decisions. Such conduct interferes with an individual's job duties, or the conduct creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. In the educational conduct, sexual harassment means conduct on the basis of sex that satisfies one or more of the following: an employee of the recipient conditioning the provision of an aid, benefit, or service of the recipient on an individual's participation in unwelcome sexual conduct, quid pro quo harassment. Unwelcome conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person equal access to the recipient's education, program or activity. That's a hostile environment harassment. Or sexual assault as defined in 20 U.S. Code Section 1092 F6AF. Dating violence as defined in 34 U.S. Code 1 Section 2291A10. Domestic violence as defined in 34 U.S. Code Section 12291A8. As defined in 34 U.S. Code Section 12291A30. The district will promptly investigate all allegations of sexual harassment of which it has actual knowledge and which are alleged to occur in the school's programs and activities, including locations, events, and or circumstances in which the school district exercises substantial control in a way that is not deliberately indifferent. The following additional definitions apply. Actual knowledge means notice of sexual harassment or allegations of sexual harassment to any employee of the district, except that this standard is not met when the only official of the district with actual knowledge is the respondent, where the respondent is an employee. Imputation of knowledge based solely on vicarious liability or constructive notice is insufficient to constitute actual knowledge. Complaints will be addressed whenever the district has actual knowledge of the allegation. Administrative leave means placing an employee on leave pursuant to state law. Nothing in the Title IX regulation precludes a recipient from placing a non-student employee respondent on administrative leave during the pendency of a grievance process, provided that Massachusetts laws are followed. Consent means cooperation in act or attitude pursuant to an exercise of free will of a conscious person with informed knowledge of the nature of the acts or actions. A current or previous relationship shall not be sufficient to constitute consent. Consent will not be found when submission to the acts or actions is undertaken due the influence of fear, fraud, or forcible compulsion, threats, and or the complainant possessed any legal incapacity to consent at the time of the act or actions. Consent is a defense to all types of sexual harassment. Complainant means an individual who is alleged to be the victim of conduct that could constitute sexual harassment. Deliberate indifference means a response to sexual harassment that is clearly unreasonable in light of known circumstances. Emergency removal means the suspension or expulsion of a student on an emergency basis consistent with state law. Nothing in the Title IX regulations precludes a district from removing a respondent from the district's education program or activity on an emergency basis, provided that the district follows all procedures under Massachusetts laws, undertakes an individualized safety and risk analysis, determines that an immediate threat to the physical health or safety of any student or other individual arising from the allegations of sexual harassment justifies removal, and provides the respondent with notice and an opportunity to challenge the decision immediately following the removal. Formal complaint means a document filed by a complainant or signed by the Title IX coordinator alleging sexual harassment and requesting that the district investigate the allegation of sexual harassment. Respondent means an individual who has been reported to be the perpetrator of conduct that could constitute sexual harassment. Supportive measures means non-disciplinary, non-punitive, individualized services offered as appropriate, as reasonably available, and without fee or charge to the complainant or the respondent before or after filing of a formal complaint or where no formal complaint has been filed. Such measures are designed to restore or preserve equal access to the recipient's education program or activity without unreasonably unburdening the other party, including measures designed to protect the safety of all parties or the recipient's educational environment or deter sexual harassment. Supportive measures may include counseling, extensions of deadlines, supportive measures may include counseling, extension of deadlines, or other course-related adjustments, modifications of work or class schedules, campus escort services, mutual restrictions on contact between the parties, changes in work or housing location, leaves of absence, increased security and monitoring of certain areas of the campus, and other similar measures. The district must maintain as confidential any supportive measures provided to the complainant or respondent to the extent that maintaining such confidentiality would not impair the ability of the recipient to provide supportive measures. The Title IX coordinator is responsible for coordinating the effective implementation of supportive measures.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Thank
You bet. Complaints and reports of sexual harassment. Upon receiving actual notice of alleged sexual harassment without a formal complaint, staff members must notify the Title IX coordinator. The Title IX coordinator must then contact the complainant within 2 school days of receiving the complaint and do the following: discuss and offer supportive measures. Consider the complainant's wishes with respect to supportive measures. Explain that supportive measures may be received with or without filing a formal complaint. Determine whether the complainant wishes to file a formal complaint, and explain to the complainant the purpose of filing a formal complaint. The Title IX coordinator must document in writing the supportive measures offered provided or why no supportive measures were offered provided. Complainant and respondents must be offered supportive measures even if they do not file a formal complaint. If the complainant declines to file a formal complaint, the Title IX coordinator must consider whether to sign a formal complaint and start an investigation despite the complainant's preferences. This decision may be appropriate when safety or similar concerns lead the district to conclude that a non-deliberately indifferent response to actual knowledge of a Title IX sexual harassment could reasonably require the school district to investigate and potentially sanction a respondent. A Title IX coordinator's decision to override the complainant's decision not to file a formal complaint must be documented in writing along with an explanation of why this decision was necessary in order to avoid deliberate indifference. Formal complaints may also be filed directly with the Title IX coordinator by a complainant in person, by mail, by email, or by telephone at any time, including non-business hours. The contact information for the Title IX coordinator is Millis Public Schools Director of Student Services, 7 Park Road, Millis, Mass. 02054, 508-906-3521. Millis Public School High School Principal, 245 Plain Street, Millis, Mass. 02054, 508-376. 7010. The complaint may be written by the complainant, or it will be reduced to writing by either the school employee who receives the complaint, the building principal, or the Title IX coordinator. Whether the complaint is reduced to writing by a student, parent, or staff member, the written complaint should include the name of the complainant, the name of the alleged victim, if different, the name of the respondent, the location of the school department where the alleged discriminatory action occurred, the basis for the complaint, witnesses, if any, and the corrective action the complainant is seeking. This information will be made on or transferred to a discrimination harassment complaint form maintained by the district. There is no time limit or statute of limitation on timing to file a formal complaint. However, at the time of filing a formal complaint, an alleged victim must be participating or attempting to participate in a program or activity of the school district. Additionally, the district has discretion to dismiss a formal complaint where the passage of time would result in the district's inability to gather evidence sufficient to reach a determination regarding responsibility, or when the district loses responsibility for the respondent, e.g., the respondent no longer attends or is employed by the district. If the conduct alleged in the formal complaint would not constitute sexual harassment as defined in this policy, even if proved, did not occur in the school district's education program or activity, or did not occur against a person in the United States, then the school district must dismiss the formal complaint under these procedures, but can investigate it under other policies and procedures. The school district must send written notice of any dismissal. Investigations to allegations of sexual harassment will be prompt, and the formal process will be completed within a 60-day time frame where feasible. There may be a temporary delay of the grievance process or the limited extension of timeframes for good cause with written notice to the complainant and the respondent of the delay or extension and the reasons for the action. Good cause may include considerations such as the absence of a party's advisor, or a witness, concurrent law enforcement activity, or the need for language assistance or accommodation of disabilities. Written notice. Before any investigation can begin, the district must send written notice to both parties, including sufficient details. Sufficient details include the identities of the parties involved in the incident, if known, the conduct allegedly constituting sexual harassment, and the date and location of the alleged incident, if known. The written notice must include a statement that the respondent is presumed not responsible for the alleged conduct and that a determination regarding responsibility is made at the conclusion of the grievance process. The written notice must inform the parties that they may have an advisor of their choice, who may be, but is not required to be, an attorney, and may inspect and review evidence. The written notice must inform the parties that the district's code of conduct prohibits knowingly making false statements or knowingly submitting false information during the grievance process. If additional allegations are added during the course of the investigation, additional written notice must be provided. Informal resolution. Where appropriate, after notice has been issued, the Title IX coordinator should also consider offering the parties an option for informal resolution, e.g. mediation. Informal resolution may only be offered after a formal complaint is filed, and the parties must give written consent to engage in this process. Informal resolution may not be used if the allegation is against an employee or respondent. Facilitators of informal resolution will be designated by the Title IX coordinator and must not be biased against any of the parties. Informal resolution is entirely voluntary. Complainants may elect to pursue formal procedures at any step in the process of making their complaint, even if informal resolution has already begun. Similarly, respondents may elect to follow formal procedures and decline informal resolution. If the complainant and the respondent feel that their grievances have been sufficiently addressed via informal resolution, then no further action needs to be taken. This voluntary conversation must occur within 5 school days after receiving the complaint of discrimination or harassment, unless both parties agree otherwise. The results of an informal resolution shall be maintained by the facilitator in writing. If the complainant is not satisfied with the resolution from the informal process, or if he/she does not choose informal resolution, then he/she can begin the formal complaint procedure described below.
Denise, I got it.
Okay,
I got it. Take a
Thanks.
break. Investigation. If informal resolution is not offered to or accepted by the parties, the Title IX coordinator will designate an investigator and a decision maker who may not be the same person. The Title IX coordinator is free to cast himself, herself in either role where appropriate. The investigator must not be biased against any of the parties at the outset of the investigation. The investigator will be responsible for interviewing parties and witnesses, finding facts, and making determinations related to credibility, all of which go into a written report. The investigator must avoid all questions that are protected by legal privilege unless the privilege has been waived, and should avoid asking about the complainant's sexual history unless it is directly relevant to prove consent to the conduct at issue or to prove that the conduct was committed by someone other than the respondent. Prior to completion of the investigative report, the school district will send to each party and the party's advisor, if any, the evidence subject to inspection and review in electronic format or a hard copy, and the parties must have at least 10 days to submit a written response, which the investigator will consider prior to the completion of the investigative report. The investigator must avoid making any final determinations of responsibility for sexual harassment. Findings should be written in a factual way in an investigative report. Credibility determinations may not be based on individual status as complainant, witness, or respondent. During the investigative process and any further hearings, complainants and respondents have a right to have advisors of their choice participate in all aspects of the proceedings. The district will provide both parties with written notice of investigative interviews, meetings, and hearings with sufficient time to prepare. Findings of responsibility. After the investigator has completed the investigation, the designated decision maker will be assigned to determine final responsibility or lack thereof for violating Title IX. The decision maker must not be biased against any of the parties at the outset of the process. Before the district can determine responsibility, an investigative report will be sent to the parties, and the decision maker will offer both the complainant and respondent the opportunity to submit proposed relevant written questions to ask of any party or witness, to respond to question posed by another party, and to offer additional limited follow-up. Questions and evidence about the complainant's sexual predisposition or prior sexual behavior are not relevant unless such questions and evidence about the complainant's prior sexual behavior are offered to prove that someone other than the respondents committed the conduct alleged by the complainant, or if the questions and evidence concern specific incidents of the complainant's prior sexual behavior with respect to the respondents and are offered to prove consent. The decision makers must explain to the party proposing the questions any decision to exclude a question is not relevant. After this process is complete, the decision maker will create a written determination regarding whether sexual harassment has occurred using a preponderance of the evidence standard. A preponderance of the evidence means that it is more likely than not that the alleged conduct occurred. The decision maker shall further recommend what actions, if any, is required. If it is determined that sexual harassment occurred, the district will take steps to prevent the reoccurrence of the harassment and correct its discriminatory effect on the complainant and others if appropriate. Such remedies may include supportive measures. The written determination must be issued to both parties simultaneously and must include identification of the allegations potentially constituting sexual harassment, a description of the procedural steps taken from the receipt of the formal complaint through the determination, including any notifications to the parties, interviews with parties and witnesses, site visits, methods used to gather other evidence, and hearings held. Findings of fact supporting the determination, conclusions regarding the application of the recipient's code of conduct to the facts, a statement of and rationale for the result as to each allegation, including a determination regarding responsibility, any disciplinary sanctions the recipient imposes on the respondent, and whether remedies designed to restore or preserve equal access to the recipient's education program or activity will be provided by the recipient to the complainant, and the district's procedures and permissible basis for the complainant and respondent to appeal a copy of or direct reference to this policy will suffice. Formal disciplinary actions may be imposed in the event that the preponderance of the evidence indicates a violation of this policy, up to and including expulsion or termination. Any disciplinary action will be in accordance with due process rights under state law and any applicable collective bargaining agreement. As indicated above, these procedures do not limit the district from removing a student or employee from a program or activity on an emergency basis based on immediate threats to people's physical health or safety, or placing an employee on administrative leave during the pendency of the investigation. Records. A record will be maintained for a period of 7 years of any actions, including supportive measures taken in response to a report of or formal complaint of sexual harassment, and district staff will document the basis for the district's conclusion that its response was not deliberately indifferent.
I'll
Training.
take it, Steve. Sorry, I was on mute. I tried to take it at the end of the last stuff. I'll take it from here. Training. The district will ensure that Title IX coordinators, investigators, decision makers, and any person who facilitates an informal resolution process receive training on the definition of sexual harassment, scope of the recipient's education program or activity, how to conduct an investigation and grievance process, including hearings, appeals, and informal resolution processes as applicable, and how to serve impartially, including by avoiding prejudgment of the facts at issue, conflicts of interest, and bias. The district will ensure that decision makers receive training on any technology to be used in interviews and on issues of relevance of questions and evidence, including when questions and evidence about the complainant's sexual predisposition or prior sexual behavior are not relevant. The district also must ensure that investigators receive training on issues of relevance to create an investigative report that fairly summarizes relevant evidence. Any materials used to train Title IX coordinators, investigators, decision makers, and any person who facilitates an informal resolution process must not rely on sex stereotypes and must promote impartial investigations and adjudications of formal complaints of sexual harassment. These training materials will be posted on the school district's website. Appeals. Any party may appeal the decision in writing to the superintendent within 15 school days of receipt of the findings of the formal procedure or a dismissal on the following basis. Procedural irregularity that affected the outcome of the matter. New evidence that was not reasonably available at the time the determination regarding responsibility or dismissal was made that could affect the outcome of the matter, and the Title IX coordinator, investigators, or decision makers had a conflict of interest or bias for or against complainants or respondents generally, or the individual complainant or respondent that affected the outcome of the matter. The school district will notify the other party in writing when an appeal is filed and implement appeal procedures equally for both parties. Both parties will have a reasonable, equal opportunity to submit a written statement in support of or challenging the outcome. The superintendent or designee, as a further impartial decision maker, will review the comprehensiveness and accuracy of the investigation and the conclusions and issue written findings to both the complainant and respondent within 30 school days of the appeal. Contact information for the superintendent. Superintendent of Schools, Millis Public Schools, 245 Plain Street, Millis, Mass. 02054, phone 508-376-7001. External grievance procedure. Any student, parent, or employee who chooses not to use the district's internal grievance procedures or who is not satisfied with the district's internal grievance procedures may file a complaint of discrimination or harassment with an appropriate state or federal agency. For complaints related to discrimination, harassment of students, the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education, 5 Post Office Square, 8th floor, Boston, Mass. 02109-3921, telephone 617-289-0111, fax 617-289-0150, TDD 877-521-2172, or the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, 1 Ashburton Place, 6th floor, room 601, Boston, Mass. 02108, phone 617-994-6000, TIY 617-994-6196. For complaints related to discrimination, harassment of parents, the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education, 5 Post Office Square, 8th floor, Boston, Mass. 02109-3921, telephone 617-289-0111, fax 617-289-0150, TDD 877-521-2172. For complaints related to discrimination, harassment of employees, the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education, 5 Post Office Square, 8th floor, Boston, Mass. 02109-3921, telephone 617-289-0111, fax 617-289-0150, TDD 877-521-2172, or the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, 1 Ashburton Place, 6th floor, room 601, Boston, Mass. 02108, phone 617-994-6000, TIY 617-994-6196, or the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, John F. Kennedy Federal Building, 475 Government Center, Boston, Mass. 02203, phone 1-800-669-4000, referral to law enforcement, other agencies. Some alleged conduct may constitute both a violation of district policies and criminal activity. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I clicked a button.
The building principal, coordinator, superintendent, or designee will refer matters to law enforcement and other agencies as appropriate under the law or district policy and inform the complainant/alleged victim of the right to file a criminal complaint. Retaliation. Complainants and those who participate in the complaint resolution process or who would otherwise oppose in a reasonable manner an act or policy believed to constitute discrimination are protected from retaliation by law and district policy. The coordinator or designee will inform all involved individuals that retaliation is prohibited and that anyone who feels that they have experienced retaliation for filing a complaint or participating in the resolution process should inform the coordinator. The coordinator will investigate reports of retaliation and where retaliation is found, take separate remedial and disciplinary action.
Thank you.
Yep. That is it, Carrie.
Done. Thank you, Denise and Steve, for that informative reading of our sexual harassment policy. Next on the agenda, we have the consideration for the school calendar. Nancy, do you want to walk us through that?
Actually, Madam Chair, I think you need to take a vote to adopt the policy now.
Oh, thank you. Really bad. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gibbons.
I make a motion to adopt the policy that I just clicked myself out of.
Sexual harassment Title IX policy 1.16-1 or .1.
Second.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Catalano.
The superintendent did some research at last week's second reading. The first one was waived. We had a discussion, or we wanted to be consistent with if criminal activity occurs on school property, what is the process? And according to our bullying policy, we state if the school principal or a designee determines that bullying has occurred, she or he shall take the appropriate disciplinary action, and it is believed that a criminal act, and if it is believed that a criminal act has occurred or criminal charges may be pursued against the perpetrator, the principal shall consult with the school's resource officer and the superintendent to determine if criminal charges are warranted. If it is determined that criminal charges are warranted, and the local law enforcement agency shall be notified. So whether we have to update our policy, but I think it should be clear that if criminal acts are occurring on campus, the victim should have the opportunity and be informed of his or her rights, and an opportunity to meet with either a school resource officer or a representative from the Millis Police to talk through options, not dictating that criminal charges have to be filed or even an incident report. But I think we need to be careful as a district that we're not making decisions on felony criminal activities that could occur, I hope never does, but could occur on our campus. So once again, I don't know if this is a question of we need to update the policy, or if it's a generalized understanding that we should be consistent with how we treat criminal activity under the bullying and treat criminal activity under this policy.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I think after having looked at that
Actually-
policy and this policy, I think the second to last, the penultimate paragraph covers much the same indication, because it says some alleged conduct may constitute both a violation of district policies and criminal activity. And then the principal, coordinator, superintendent, or designee will refer matters to law enforcement, so, or other agencies as a.
Yeah, and I got caught up, Nancy, I agree with you, but I got caught up as what is as appropriate. That's what triggered the question last week. I don't like that term because I'm not sure exactly what it means. Maybe we adopt the policy and we can go back and see. I know that this is boilerplate provided by our attorneys, but just the as appropriate is what stopped me last week.
So first thing, I'm just going to ask if everyone that's on YouTube, on the Zoom, if you also have a YouTube window open, to mute it, because we're getting all that feedback. And second, I'm going to suggest that we adopt the policy. And then Steve, why don't we follow up with Andy and see if we need to amend it, in a later date with those concerns.
I agree. And I think maybe we can figure it out without having to amend, but I agree we should adopt today and then figure it out.
Okay. So we did have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the policy 1.16.1. So any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Robin, was that a yes or? Okay.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. So Steve, we will follow up, and Nancy, let's follow up on if we need to amend that policy with Steve's, to take care of Steve's concerns.
Certainly.
Okay, I think we're ready for the school calendar.
Okay. I spoke to the school calendar at our last meeting, and really nothing has changed except for one thing, but I will recap very briefly that because of the agreement at the state level, the Commissioner of Education has amended the requirements for students from 180 days to 170 days, thus giving 10 extra days at the beginning of the school year for training for teachers and staff in our safety protocols and also in the instructional practices and improvements that need to happen in remote and hybrid learning. So we have adopted a calendar that has those days of training at the beginning of the year. Teachers come back August 31st, have 8 days of peer training, and then we have 2 days set aside for a combination of professional development and orientation. And that orientation will be used to reach out to families, to students and their parents, provide some training for them, ideally in how to log in and all of the tools they will need to make remote learning and hybrid learning more successful, and also to do those social emotional check-ins, make sure students are familiar with their teacher and the routines. And then students come back September 16th for instruction in a remote learning model. The other change is that we've provided one more full day for parent conferences, because we believe this year it will be more important than ever for teachers to check in with every family, and to do so to make sure things are going well in a remote or a hybrid learning model. And that is added in on November 5th, right around the time we usually have a half day for parent conferences. We also have still continue to have evening conferences in November as well for parents who are unable to attend even remotely during the school day. And some of this outreach may be by email as well as remote conferencing. And there might be an option for in-person conferences as well. And finally, the last change is that rather than have one longer release day once a month, teachers will need more frequent release day professional development time to develop their screencasts and videos and all of the lessons that they will be creating for more effective and more robust remote and hybrid learning experience. So in consultation with the Millis Teachers Association, we, and of course, a lot of dialogue around this, we've proposed that instead of once on a Monday, once per month on, I'm sorry, not a Monday, a Wednesday, that we take that time and spread it out to be approximately an hour and a half every Wednesday. Originally last week, I had proposed 2 hours every Wednesday for this professional development, team time, lesson development. But we did the analysis and we would not have quite met the time and learning requirements. So we're proposing those Wednesdays to be every Wednesday afternoon, an hour and a half, so that dismissal at the middle school would be around 1 o'clock and at Clyde around 1:30. The added advantage is if we are in a hybrid or in-person model, is that students will be able to stay through lunch, which bolsters not only our access to students who might be food insecure and gives them more opportunity to access lunches in school, but also assists in the revenue for the food service program. So that is the ending date for school is June 17th. We still by law have to designate 5 days for so-called snow days or inclement weather, or could be emergency hurricane or loss of power, something like that, that prohibits us from providing remote or hybrid learning. But now with remote learning, I think that will be less needed. Those days will be less needed, so we'll probably be ending on June 17th.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to adopt the revised 2021 school calendar as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration for kindergarten and preschool September tuition. I think let's start with preschool because I know Dr. Marks also wrote a letter about the preschool program in general. So, Dr. Marks, do you want to walk us through that? Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you. There you go.
It'll go very quickly that way, won't it? Madam Chair and school committee members, thank you for inviting us to make suggestions and proposals about in-person learning, especially for our youngest students. The documents you have in front of you actually discuss how we are suggesting to bring in through a series of steps all these students, whether they be students with or without disabilities, into our schools for some in-person sessions. There's two benefits to this, or there's many benefits to this, but it's consistent with Department of Education guidance that asks us to consider how important this is for our youngest students and providing them opportunities to develop important social skills, communication skills, for motor development that are vitally important at this time. The model that we're suggesting we go to would, no matter what the typical day would have been, or the typical group would have been. So typically that's 15 students in a 2.5-hour session, morning or afternoon, and we have 3, 4, and 5-day sessions. Because it's important for us to have smaller group sizes to accommodate safe practices and social distancing, we're suggesting group sizes of 6 to 8 or less, which would incorporate same age peers and students with disabilities, and allow all students an opportunity to participate in 2 days. We would try to replicate the cohort should the district go to remote, so that we would do a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday cohort for these children. We believe that this provides a safe and healthy opportunity and in-person learning. The teachers would also work overtime to offer some remote services, but we don't believe at this time it's beneficial to the majority of our students to try to provide a fully remote model for our youngest 3 and 4-year-olds. So that would be a developing process, and we would hope to learn as the teachers are working with them in and out of school what works best and what children are responding to. So I think I've just hit the top, the highlights. We are suggesting then that would mean half the tuition would be half of what the 4-day tuition would typically be.
Okay, so you're suggesting half? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm suggesting, since it's 2 days, that the easiest thing to do is to look at what a 4-day session would cost and ask for 2 days.
Okay.
Or half of it, which would cover 2 days.
Yep. Can you talk a little bit about just the idea, not the idea of the thought around how regular ed kids serve as peer support to?
Yes, yes. So part of the reason, a majority of the reasons why public schools actually got to begin to provide preschool had to do with the requirement of providing services for young children with disabilities. And I think early on it was recognized that providing students with disabilities who could be developmentally delayed opportunities to be with other similar students wasn't the most effective. So the model that is suggested and that we follow is an integrated preschool model, which means that we bring in students who may have significant or maybe even mild developmental delays, and they're paired with same age peers. And in Millis, those students pay tuition to come to school. And it's a mutually beneficial program. It allows wonderful developmental opportunities for many Millis students, as well as meets the requirements now, because it's IEPs are legal documents like we've discussed before. And in that document, we actually say the placement is an integrated preschool. So if you adopt this model, because we have just a small number of students with disabilities, we would still be providing an integrated preschool setting for them.
Thank you. So the motion or the ask from the school, just for the committee, is for the preschool to be allowed to integrate regular ed kids into the classroom in a smaller class size between 6 and 8, and have just offer a 2-day session. So like Dr. Mark said, it models the hybrid model that we're working towards, hopefully in shortly after start of school. So this would model that, or we're keeping it small class sizes and able to offer the services for both the kids with special needs and for the regular ed kids at half tuition rate. Any discussion or any questions or comments from the committee?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
one question. I know in the memo that it talks about, the importance of developing socialization, motor communication skills. I'm wondering how that looks in a model where the kids are supposed to be at desks 6 feet apart and not interacting.
That's a great question, Mr. Conroy. And I think that we have a lot to learn about doing that. But just like we can socialize remotely, I think there's ways that we can work with students to socialize across 6-foot distance and what have you. We can use things like hula hoops and pool noodles to show them what required distancing looks like, and be able to still do the motor activities, because now we have a very, very large space to spread everybody around. There's also opportunities to even draw squares on the floor. So when it's exercise time, everybody goes into a square. We can use our outside playground as well, and people would have children would have designated places they would play. They have a model for this already in preschool, because students do choose centers. And so they're used to taking their name and saying, I'm going to this center, and choosing things. So there's definitely one of the reasons why we're talking about a slow move to this, and small groups and orientation with families. And I'm sorry, I didn't mention that sooner, would be so that children get to glimpse this before they come. They'll get to see their teachers prior to coming to school, see them masked, see them maybe even wearing other PPE, see their classrooms rearranged, hear some of the things that teachers are going to be putting into place to help provide the safe distancing. And I think we do have some learning to do in this regard. So maybe I can come back to you and bring some of the preschool teachers, and they can show you or share with you how they've conquered this, because they're very excited to bring the youngest children back into our schools.
And I just want to clarify, or not clarify, but remind anyone that will watch this, that when the school committee took the vote last meeting to go full remote, we did leave the window open to bring in children on IEPs or special populations. And I think that this is the very definition of a special population.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else on the committee?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Gibbons.
Just one thing I just wanted to clarify, just for those, I guess, of us, myself, and for anybody that might be watching. So Sue-Ann, thanks so much. The one thing I just wanted to confirm is that the program, which will be offering 2 days in person, and there's no, outside of services that might be delivered for IEPs, there's no remote learning portion of this proposed model. Again, outside of IEP services that might be determined to be delivered via a remote model. But for non-IEP, there's no remote component of it. I'm just trying to liken it to a hybrid model that we talked about a little bit last week, and there was a remote component of it. there's not one in this scenario, if I read it correctly.
There, I think you're right. However, what I think I wrote in here was that we would like to put all our attention into this model, that's for sure. But teachers are still committed to providing some remote experiences for students should the occasion arise that the school has to be closed completely.
Okay,
We don't want to leave our children without an opportunity or without experience. In fact, we're suggesting in some of the first days prior to the start of school, one of the first introductions or orientation is remote. That the teacher actually says, I'm going to give you a story time sometime. One of the beauties of that too, we have 2 preschool teachers and they can alternate providing some of these remote experiences since group size doesn't matter. But that's not going to be where we're going to rest our education. We're not going to ask tuition for it or anything like that. It's an extra offering or an extension while we're in this model.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Conroy?
So I guess part of me is a little concerned about the idea that we're not focusing on a remote plan, given the uncertainty between now and September 16th. I guess the question I'm wondering is why not focus the program on a remote setting and then start that way and move towards hybrid. And I guess the other half of the question is, because I understand the IEP aspect of it as well, but that goes to all grades. What is there a way to specifically carve out, or are we carving out the specific IEP services required for every student? And this isn't just a preschool question, but an pre-K through 12 question to then carve out what services really should and need to be done in the building versus services that may be able to be done remotely.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Conroy, our experience and across the state, widespread, the feedback from special education directors, families, etc., was that remote preschool doesn't work. As a whole, we can't deliver 3 hours of preschool to a 3 or a 4-year-old student. So we're not suggesting we're not focusing on expanding our remote opportunities, but I guess what I wanted to make clear was there was, as you're suggesting, some questions about whether or not we could provide a fully remote preschool experience, and it almost seems to be an oxymoron. Preschool is about being together. Preschool is about experience. Preschool is about having folks in front of you. But we also are very serious and understand the importance of making sure we have those connections when we've worked with families and students to access some learning remotely. But we want it to be a build-up because folks were overwhelmed and in some cases just said, this is too much for me and my family to understand the technology, to understand the platforms. I'm just going to come on for story time or what have you. So I think we would like to slowly build that capacity with students. As a matter of fact, Jen Starr is in the process of making sure that we have enough iPads for all students with and without disabilities. So if I misspoke, I'm sorry. So we're not disregarding that. But for the moment, I think the students in front of us and safe and distancing will be the first focus. And we will start every week to build up a few more remote opportunities that we think it's really important that the kiddos are with us.
So do we run the risk in the I guess what risk are we running if we're not prepared or we're not preparing to get to a point where we're ready to go remote with the IEP services for the IEP services specifically just for preschool?
If I can talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so initially, whether the students with IEPs would come to school according to whether or not the other students are there, according to what their IEPs say. And then I'd say the majority of the preschool students' cases, that's 3 days a week, 3 half-day sessions a week. We would still do that. These are kiddos with disabilities, and that's how we would propose to service them. We think it's a stronger service delivery model. We think it's better for more students to have other same age peers in with them. By the same token, we do understand if school closes down completely, we will continue to develop those remote learning opportunities. And students with disabilities in preschool did receive speech and language services remotely, did connect with their teachers remotely. So we know we can do it. We just believe that the best model is in front of us. So I think I'm doing this a disservice. We did deliver special education services remotely to preschoolers last year. And we're going to just build that capacity and build all students' capacity to receive more and gain more through what we're doing at the beginning of this school year as well.
Thank you. And Mark, any further questions?
Not so much a question, I guess. Well, it's kind of a question. Maybe if we're basically what this is the proposal is in essence a full hybrid model for preschool.
It's a hybrid,
And-
yes. It's a hybrid model for preschool. And the reason why we're not saying full is that we're not saying we're providing, if someone signed up for 5 days of preschool and they're coming 2 days, we're not saying we're providing 3 days of remote. So if we said we were in a full hybrid model, but what we are is at least looking at that cohort and
So-
providing what we think is the strongest early childhood education we can to the most students here in Millis, with and without
It's a
disability.
reduced class size and a reduced frequency.
In the same amount of staff members, so it's a paraprofessional and a teacher.
Okay.
I think it's not ideal, Mr. Conroy, I agree with you, but I do think that this is a strong way to start. And then don't be surprised if I don't come from you a month from now and say, this is what we've learned and this is what we'd like to do. But this is what we believe right now with what we learned last spring, if we're allowed to bring students back, would be the most beneficial.
And I just want to just clarify again for everyone that this is the preschool kids, the littlest kids in our district, 3 and 4 years old, and it's because of their age that we're looking at this, them being the youngest group and most beneficial to having some in-class time.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
I guess I appreciate that aspect of it, but I guess my question is, it goes, then the next question is, well, then could the same case be made for kindergarten? And could the same case be made for I guess my only struggle is why is this making the distinction of where is that?
Yep.
Where is that line?
So
Madam,
go ahead.
oh, sorry.
I
I
don't,
don't
I don't want to answer for Dr. Marks. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll let her answer and then I have my own thoughts too.
Would you rather go first, Ms. Gibbons? That's fine, thank you.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I think preschool is a separate entity. We look at it very differently. Our children with disabilities are here, and then members of the community actually enroll their students. It's a choice. So we do look at these small groups differently, and we do understand the developmental needs of 3 and 4 year olds are different. And I'm not saying that the kindergartners are less so, but I think when we think about school in general, we think about preschool, then we think about the early childhood ages, we think about elementary, we think about secondary. And so I would really strongly beseech the committee to allow us to go forward with this model. And and I will commit to working with the preschool teachers to continue to develop our remote capacities, so that I hear Mr. Conroy and I understand and believe that he's making a strong point, and I do think that it's heard, and I would like to to confirm that we'll work hard to meet that goal as well.
Ms. Gibbons?
The only thing I was going to add is that for kindergarten and up, we don't really have this option of bring them in for 2 days of school and then not offer any other educational opportunities for the remainder of the week. So it does seem like its own standalone logistical scenario. Outside of the IEPs that have services to be delivered, this one does feel like an outlier based outside of all of the other grades that we have, where we have an opportunity to bring students in for 2 days only and not be looking at how do we, for the rest of the week, provide educational services for those students. So I just think it feels to me a little just the one opportunity we have to go a little off book, if you will, as far as the flexibility that we have with the pre-K program.
Madam Chair. Ms. Gibbons? Oh, sorry, Ms. Briggs.
Okay. Ms. Marks, just to clarify, people that would potentially opt for remote because they have a kid that has health issues or are not comfortable with being in the building, that is off the table. Their child has to be in the building.
For the time being, we can't, I think we would have to hire staff to really say additional staff in order to do that. Because we'd be providing live, or we need someone in the classroom who would be following somebody with a camera or something like that. So for the moment, and because, the research tells us and our experience has told us that's not where to put our energy, I think that we're going to continue to try to develop those things, but similar to how we don't recommend kiddos get put in front of a television or a computer right now, I'm sure you understand. It doesn't mean we wouldn't like to meet all needs. Hopefully, just to be clear, we had 43 families involved in our preschool program right now. Out of 43, 39 responded, and 39 families responded. 34 out of 39 confirmed that they were interested in some hybrid, some in-person sessions. And we gave an options because we were trying to see what people were thinking. And we were wondering if some people would just want the full Monty, so to speak, or nothing. But many of them checked, I'll take anything that has to do with live. A few families opted out, just said, I think school is not for our family this year.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano?
so if we go to this 2-day hybrid with no remote, so it's not really a hybrid, 2 days in, 2 days all in, and then we transition to 5 days, right? That's the goal, to get there as soon as possible. But then something happens and the state goes into a shutdown again, right? Where it's no longer a local decision, it's a state decision. Are we now going to say to the families that started at 2, went to 5, are they out of the program? If we don't have a remote capability, or if we're only doing remote for the IEP students,
No.
and we're not, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry if I gave that impression. The remote development that we would be doing would be remote for everybody. So students with disabilities get specific services, but they also have services that involve being in part of a group and story time and responding to some simple questions about what they've heard or what's been read or what's been shared, turn taking, things that involve social skills and what have you. So those things are also very important parts of IEP services. But it's also just good early childhood education. So we would be, I think over the course of the spring, our preschool teachers videotaped story times, did live sessions and show and tell with students, met individually with small groups, sent home packets of activities, because that's what we had to work with. to important developmental resources that are available online and may be pre-recorded. So it's that same idea of the synchronous and asynchronous and independent, where we send home. We were even talking about, oh, well, if bus drivers are driving around the community, they could deliver packets to preschool families, as well as deliver meals or do these other things. So there's a lot of thinking going on about how we can get additional resources to families in the occasion. I think the only point we were trying to make now is we didn't want to make a promise that we could deliver 2 days of in-person services, and then we would have these 2 fully developed 2.5-hour sessions on the other days. We don't think that's the best way to expend our energy right now if we can have folks in front of us. And we have that Wednesday, like the superintendent described. So there is more opportunity for developing those remote capacities. And I can assure you, our people don't stand still. They want to reach more. They want to do better. And I think this is a terrific opportunity.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Conroy.
Um, last week when we met, we asked specific questions, and one of the things that came out in feedback, some have received and we got, was the parent survey that originally went out was very basic. Would you like to come back to school or would you not? And 85% said, yeah, they want hybrid. Some of the feedback since then, after our meeting last week, was there's a lot of people who potentially would have changed their mind given given that they didn't have information regarding logistics and how the day would look and what in school actually looks like. Has that been laid out for the 39 families, 43 families that have said they'd be all in, that they'd like to come back to in person?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy, this survey was sent out last Friday after the school committee's decision, because it was only then that we knew that we had to make a proposal for something different. In the email that was attached and in the actual survey itself, it did describe some of the healthy and the safe distancing practices that we would be carrying out. And I know that the preschool teachers have answered some specific emails and specific concerns as well.
Okay.
Any other questions, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Briggs.
Ms. Marks, I was just wondering if parents didn't feel comfortable sending their kids into the building now, but then let's say in, I don't know, January, everything's fine and we're moving back to in-person, would families be able to opt in to preschool at that time, in-person preschool, or is it like have to decide now and that decision is final for the whole school year?
I don't think, am I muted? I don't think a final decision has been made on there, but with the students that we think we have, which would be almost everybody, maybe there's a handful that haven't, we can maintain these cohorts. And I think if the cohorts exceed this, we'd come back and ask if we could have larger cohorts. And I'm sure that would depend on whatever the metrics are out there as far as health. But I don't think we've made a decision to exclude anyone. But I do think for the moment, when we settle the cohorts, we would probably try to stay with that in place. We wouldn't look into our, if people opt out, we wouldn't look into our waiting list or anything, because we're committed to that sort of safe 6 to 8 cohort. If it gets below that, we would probably try to include more. And certainly if it gets to mid-year and everybody deems it safe to include more students, I think our preschools teachers would welcome that. In fact, I think in the long run, we would like to have all preschool, because a full preschool is somewhere between 12 and 15 students, which would be equal to what about a half of a class could be. So I think that our longer term view would maybe to have everybody in and into the sessions that they were originally enrolled. But for the moment, we believe this is the best way to see most students as possible.
So or in order to move forward, I need to have somebody from the committee make a motion. Because I don't think I can I?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Givens?
I make a motion to approve the preschool reopening plan as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy?
I'm just hesitant on this because I'm concerned about, much like we talked about on last Thursday, about the idea of approving something with contingencies on things that needed to be developed. And ultimately, I'm concerned that we're not focusing on a remote model to be built out for September 16th. You know, I'm also, I do think that this opens up a slippery slope of what it means for different ages as we go up and where the cutoff is. And so I'm reluctant to, that's why I'm reluctant to support this tonight.
Dr. Marks?
If I may, one of the things that I think was central to our consideration of this proposal was that Department of Education has made it really clear in both its guidance to special education, the reopening guidance in general, a fall reopening guidance, was that these students were to be considered as a higher need population, whether they were with or without disabilities, and that we were to consider them for in-person sessions. So this isn't something random, and we can point to actual guidance that asks us to do this. It's specific to preschool.
So we have a motion on the table. It's moved and seconded. I think I just want to add that I agree with a point that Ms. Gibbons made, that I really think that preschool needs to be looked separately. And I don't, and Mark, I don't agree that there's still unanswered questions. I think they have taken their program, they have pared it down. There's 68 kids. It's only being offered 2 days for a few hours a day.
No, just to clarify, and my question more were, we asked last week what the entrance policy was and protocols are, and what all of that was going to be, and we didn't get any answers, and I haven't seen any answers since then. That was more not the program necessarily how it run, but actually the logistics of what a day-to-day would look like, and I haven't seen that we've gotten any of that. So that's what I meant with that. That's all.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Nancy.
I can assure you that the Tanner Brown and Elise Malloy and Dr. Marks and the teachers are developing those. It's just because of the timing, it was that part of our plan has not been shared with the committee yet, but those are developed with staggered entrance times, etc. They've been able to delve deeply into more of the logistics.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Catalano.
And the guidance that came from DESE on July 9th, the one that Sue Ann was referencing, said schools and districts should prioritize in-person instruction for this group, but should also be prepared to adjust to hybrid or remote services. So going back to one of the other concerns was, it doesn't say we don't do remote for this population. It says be prepared. So I think we should use our extra time and should be preparing for all three options. And that's important, because I'm not comfortable with, if we do this and then we bring them on board and then we have to go to all remote, then they're just left out of the program. And we're only dealing with kids with IEPs. which we're mandated to do by law. So the guidance that came out a month and a half ago, or actually not a month and a half ago, 5 weeks ago, stated we should be looking at all three options and not just putting one. So I think we need to devote time and energy on that as well.
Dr. Marks?
I think if you look at the last part of the reopening plan, so just to be clear, the proposal I was bringing to you was really talking about from now until what we perceive to be October 6th. So the first 4 weeks of school, because we knew there was going to be a shift then. So that there would be still development of remote learning. But if you look, there's already at the bottom of this, so the very last step, it says, should school health metrics determine the necessity of school closure or transition to distance learning, all preschool classes will be held remotely. Students will have access to a full session of instruction, which would include live virtual, pre-recorded, or self-paced independent activities. These are the things I described to you we did in the spring. IEP services will be delivered, remote learning plans will be created. And the comment that we talked about and further developed is we started outlining that the schedule for 2.5 hours of preschool would be about an hour and a half of content, but also provide families with an outline or a schedule to say, now it's time to have a break or have snack. This would be a good time in preschool where we would go outside, and to try to provide a 2.5 hour set of opportunities for preschool. So if I'm sorry I mischaracterized the remote development portion, but in my mind, I was speaking to you from now until whenever the next shift is made and the next decision is made. But I did not, what I was trying to say is we're not going to try to provide a full remote experience to balance out what parents have had originally been enrolled for. It'd be virtually impossible for a teacher of a 5-day program to be delivering two-day cohorts and 5 days of remote over the top of it. Right.
And for clarification, the Columbus Day is on the 12th, so that was the date that we use. So it's not the 6th. It would be after October 12th or before if the circumstance changed greatly.
So I can assure you preschool teachers are ready to develop remote if they had to do it tomorrow. But our preference and our request, please, is to let us have our children in front of us for a little bit anyway. And it seems that that's the request of the families as well. Most recent as last Friday, and some of the last results came in yesterday and today.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor for the preschool proposal as presented?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
So we have 4 for and 1 opposed, so motion carries. So kindergarten.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Dr. Mark.
Thanks so much, Dr. Marks.
Kindergarten, Nancy, do you want to walk us through that letter? Or Terry?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Basically, what we did is we looked at how we're opening, and I think it's the same whether we're full remote or we were hybrid. Is that because, as Nancy explained with the calendar, we're really opening mid-month, and so that means that we're really essentially going to be in session for about half of the month. That we looked at the tuition we would be charging for September, and really felt it was more appropriate to charge about half of that tuition for that first month. So what we're proposing for kindergarten is basically to charge 50% of what the normal month's tuition would be. And then regardless of the form that we go forward with after that, we're expecting to have, full sessions and would continue to charge the full day tuition for full day attendees. But again, in that first month, they really would only get, half the days for the full day kindergarten sessions.
Right, so so kindergarten, full day kindergarten is a choice. So
Correct.
if families feel that that's not something that they want to do, they have the option to choose a half-day session.
That is correct. Everyone is entitled free of charge for a half-day kindergarten session.
Okay. Does anyone in the committee have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gibbons?
just have one, just to clarify, Terry. So based on what we just talked about with Dr. Marks, the preschool tuition would be half,
Correct.
or they'd be charged for the 2 days. And
Correct.
so this would be half of the half, right? Because we're starting half month of September. Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
No, I think what he said is that,
Yeah.
and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, September we would charge half only because we're starting late.
Correct.
And then going forward, because we're offering a full program, whether via it remote or when we go to the hybrid model, we would still charge those families that choose full day kindergarten full tuition.
Sorry, I was only talking about preschool. I'm sorry. I didn't clarify. I didn't clarify.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
So
preschool's
I
a
just
little
want- I just
different
want-
tuition format. So
Yes.
Yeah, and especially with what we just approved, the preschool tuition will be already reduced because it's a reduced offering. And then we're
correct.
saying on top of the reduced offering reduction, we have another reduction on top of that because we're only doing it for half the month of September.
For kindergarten, for full day kindergarten, that's correct.
Right, and for preschool, okay.
Yep.
I think I have it. Preschool has 2 layers of it only for September.
Well, preschool, I think preschool you've already dealt with. That 50% tuition that was incorporated in Dr. Marks's memo was really an evolution of my initial memo, but it's still the 50% tuition because of the format that she's going to use for administering. So it's that half, it's half of the, I think it's what, $223 if I remember, because of the way people are going to, or students are going to attend. So you've
Right.
dealt with that. So
But
all
for
we really,
September,
yeah.
sorry. So I guess I'm a little stuck on preschool for September. That's all. I'm totally good with full-time kindergarten, understand that. But for preschool, only in the month of September, because we're not starting it in that
okay, I think I
2 week
know where you
earlier
are.
spot. Sorry, that's where I am.
think I know where you are.
I mean, retroing September, I guess, is
Well,
what.
yeah. I think a better way to say it is we're going to bill based on that new rate, based on the preschoolers' actual days of attendance. So I
Perfect, thank
suppose,
you.
how's that
Okay.
sound? All right.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying for me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Is there any questions from the committee around the memo for full day kindergarten tuition? Does somebody want to make a motion?
Madam Chair. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
I would make a motion that we approve the kindergarten fee rates as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, before we go to the ventilation study, I see Marianne on. Hi, Marianne.
Yes.
Hi. Hello.
So we're going to move back up to open session. And like I said at the beginning, the Millis teachers had asked to make a statement. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate you accommodating for my schedule conflict. So on behalf of the Millis Teachers Association, would like to speak to 2 things this evening. First being the association's response to the school committee decision that was made last week. And the second being the expectation of staff members during this remote learning time period. First, as I stated last week, the Millis Teachers Association had not taken a position just yet on the return to school since we were waiting on information. Of course, while we value the work that went into the creation of all 3 models across the buildings, let it be known that the Millis Teachers Association fully supports the school committee's decision. And I say that among the Millis Teachers Executive Board, who are duly elected, decision-making body of the association, supports this. While we have not yet polled our members yet, I can attest that by the dozens of emails and texts that we received from our members across all 3 units, expressing their relief, their gratitude. They are excited to get back to work without the fear and anxiety, over them. So we still, will obviously request further negotiations regarding the educators of those special categories, including the pre-K teachers that was referenced this evening, and who are going to be brought into the building. So, and also, we'll be continuing to be involved in the conversation when the transition to hybrid, whenever that is, because obviously the growing concern over the rise in COVID cases since many schools reopening have been a concern. The second item that we would like to speak to is the expectations. So we were told that the expectation of members is to be present in the building during this remote time. And we firmly believe that this should be at the employee's discretion. And after speaking with the Millis Teachers Executive Board, we would like to present our reasonings and our concerns. So last week, you had said that the members can go in and access their materials, and if they wish to work from their building in their classroom, so be it. I know for me, I feel that I do work better in the classroom, so I might opt to do that. If I'm alone in my classroom, open window, mask on, I personally would feel safe. However, not all of our members feel that way. So therefore, there has been a clear precedent set that staff was successfully delivering their instructions in the remote fashion in the spring. We believe that the medical and any medical or childcare conflicts, should be given consideration. Even those that aren't comfortable, just returning to the buildings. We expect that the special education employees should be treated no differently, as they too fall under the same contractual negotiations. And, just know this, please, that and as you do know, the staff in the Millis Public Schools are the most passionate and dedicated of any school district. And we know that you trust our professionalism and our commitment. So, that being said, we've been grateful for all the PD offered by the tech service department. They've been unbelievable, so helpful, and since, this all began. But we don't feel that that was a critical challenge, that's something that, deems it necessary to be in the building. As for concerns regarding collaboration, our administrators can tell you that teams and departments were highly successful collaborating via Google Meet and Zoom. In-person collaboration, would obviously, expose staff members to each other, especially, in the middle school, high school, where we know that the air quality, the airflow is not good. I actually heard from a few staff today that said that, they would need to be isolated in their classroom because of their anxiety and concerns regarding health, which would feel more restricted. As been mentioned, childcare is huge. It's probably the most as of today, the emails that I have received along with other members of our executive board. It varies, obviously, from every Millis educator. And as you know, the families of educators have been forced to uproot and move children to different districts, search unsuccessfully in many cases for daycare. And right now, families that have, spouses who may be essential would leave no one home to supervise those remote students. In our case, we have a number of Millis staff, and if their students, their children are working remotely, and their, partner, or they might, if they're single parent, they don't have anyone watching over their children. And unfortunately, grandparents in many cases aren't an option. So That's just a real pressing issue right now for us. We want to be, teaching our students, but we certainly cannot, under no circumstances, leave our own families in a detrimental state. So the alternative options of taking FMLA or the Family First Leave Act, it's just not an option for our members, as many survive on the two incomes or only have one income. So far, the Millis Teachers Association have participated in good faith efforts to work in this, just for the district in a collaborative manner, and we really hope that we can continue discussing this, as we too believe that the best opportunity for our Millis students is to receive an education from Millis teachers. And there would be really right at this moment, no way to account for the amount of teachers who would need to take a leave if forced, which would be detrimental to their families and obviously the Millis students. So please, let me reiterate that our educators want to teach our students. We love the Millis community. We'll make sure our students have the educational experience that they deserve, no matter where they teach. With that said, I also please encourage the administrators to poll the teachers. We haven't been asked. So what Dr. Marks was saying about the preschool teachers, I'm not aware that they were asked. I don't know about our special education. I don't know what's, I haven't heard anything, and I've been in touch with, my executive board, and they haven't either. So please ask us. We will be honest and we will be helpful.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to on behalf of the rest of the school committee for everything that you and the teachers are doing and continue to do. I completely agree with you. The Millis teachers are a special breed. You guys are phenomenal rock stars. What you guys were able to do in remote learning or emergency learning was phenomenal, and we thank you for all of your hard work. One clarification, it wasn't that I wanted to make. It wasn't the school committee's intent to say that for the perception that or it's not the school committee's intent to have you required to be in school. So, and I hear all of your concerns, and I can assure you that we will work with the superintendent and yourself to make sure that we know all of the teachers' concerns and that we're able to address them while we continue to work to a hybrid model.
Okay.
So thank you.
No, thank you.
Terry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I think you're on mute for a second, Carrie.
Oh, me?
Yeah, for a second. I think somehow you got muted.
Oh.
Yep.
Maybe it was subliminal.
All right, I think moving on to the really kind of two memos kind of work together. One kind of summarizes kind of an initial skimming, if you will, of I think it was 155-page study. And just to give a brief background of this, you'll remember that where this started was, of course, in 2013, Tetra Tech had identified various components that all needed at some point in time to be replaced. Fast forward to, I think it was last fall, and the Capital Planning Committee kind of looked at it and said, it seems like all these things go together. Could we get a study and see what it would cost to deal with the roof, which is one thing, which seems to relate to some of these rooftop units that are also part of all this other stuff. And we said, well, yeah, I think we could do that. And the number we suggested was $100,000. We were blessed with Representative Linsky getting us an earmark that actually funded it, as opposed to the warrant article that the town passed. And that's the study that you have before you. And putting aside some of the plumbing and, of course, the roof part and some of the other pieces of this study, which is evaluating the equipment. Is it good, bad, or ugly? And if it's ugly, what needs to be done? Um, basically, to sum it up, it's a 24-year-old system. It is a system that is based on using unit ventilators, which are when you're looking in a room, the unit ventilator is designed for heating. It is not, despite its name, not designed for year-round ventilation of a room. It has really outlived its usefulness, its useful life. Then obviously we know from Clyde Brown, there are more modern systems that can do, far more effective things. And 2 recommendations were made. Both recommendations essentially said, tear out what you got. You could replace it with a unit ventilator system. You could replace it with something akin to what you have in Clyde Brown. Both options fairly expensive because, as it also identified, there are other things, there are other dominoes that come into place.
So Terry, can I just stop for a second? Because I just don't want people
Nope,
to
that's
get
fine.
confused with, I think there's 2 different issues, right? There's,
Correct.
we asked for a mechanical study and we asked the town to help fund it, and for a mechanical study for the overall replacement of the roof and all of the mechanical systems in the middle high school.
Correct.
That's separate from our current situation with with ventilation, and saying, what do we, how can we be assured, or how can we assure and be assured that there's the proper ventilation in the Millis High School that will allow us to move to a hybrid model. So I don't want to get the two, it's not that we have to replace all these 20-year-old systems in order to go hybrid. That's not the case.
Correct.
Ventilation study is to get reassurance or to learn what we need to do to get us in the short term, kids and teachers safely back into the classroom.
Correct, Madam Chairman, and you're
I don't want to scare people.
You're moving me on was actually perfect timing, because that's where I was going.
Thank you.
Okay, so putting aside that first study, what we've been doing is obviously looking at just that. Okay, looking at how we can use the current system, obviously, to maximize ventilation of the classrooms and of the entire building of the middle high school. Now, again, our exhaust systems, and there are 5 exhaust fans in that building, they are working. We have done a deep cleaning, by the way, okay, as part of our regular maintenance of that entire system. Okay, those fans were taken apart, they were cleaned extensively. So that's the first thing people need to know. Those exhaust fans are working, and during the warm weather, quite frankly, we can open the windows and it creates a great circulation in the building. And that's one of the things, quite frankly, if you go out into the industry, it's one of the first things you'll see recommended. Open the windows and use exhaust fans if you have them in your building to circulate air. A lot of times people ask about filters. We are currently running MERV 8s and MERV 9s. Those are the heftiest filters, I guess I'll put it that way, that we can run on the current system. However, they are a huge improvement over what we were running before John came here. Before, when John came here, we were running a filter that was akin to what you might have in your home furnace. So they are a big improvement, but they are not a MERV 13, and they're certainly not a MERV 18, because the motors that we have in the current system won't support them. However, we can do things like change them more frequently. John can speak to this better than I can, but he's been doing a lot of work on the unit ventilators. Remember I said they are something that is used basically as a heating unit? He's been investigating how you could actually, I won't say convert them, but I guess trick them into being a ventilator.
Alternate use, Terry.
Alternate use. And he's done a lot of work on that. And I think it's fair to say that through his efforts and working with Control Point, our vendor, there are ways that we can actually use the unit ventilators in the non-heating season to actually bring fresh air into those classrooms in addition to the windows. Okay. The other, and I'm just going to run through. We've also, we're in the process right now of drafting an invitation to bid for air purifiers that we would put in virtually every occupied area of the classroom. And in those air purifiers, we can get what are called ultra HEPA filters that I think go down to 0.003 microns. And that's really one strategy we think would be highly effective and pretty easy to implement. And we can get them rated for the size of room, or in some cases, if the room, like let's say the cafeteria is too large for one, obviously get multiple units to cover that space. And then, of course, one of the things is we do regular maintenance, and it's important we continue to do that regular maintenance, and we be aggressive with that regular maintenance. Now, one of the other things we could do, okay, well, actually, one other thing, it was brought to our attention, and I think it's something we felt for very short money we could do as an additional way to measure how the airflow was going in some of these rooms, is we're getting 3 CO2 meters so that we can actually read the CO2 levels in rooms. And normally the way you measure it is cubic feet per minute, I believe it is. But this is another way of kind of measuring, obviously, if the CO2 was building up in a room, then obviously the air is not circulating well, and it's something we would need to look at in that particular room. So we are buying some technology to help us, understand what may be happening in any given area. So one of the other things we could do is there's been a number of firms that were identified by the state that, if you will, they're on a state bid list, for lack of a better way to describe it, that can come in and help you identify what problems you have, and more importantly, how you could use your current system to compensate for them. One of the firms I've worked with before, I reached out to them. I'll be honest, frankly, their initial price was higher than I expected. I reached out to them again and got that number to come down by about half. I'm not sure that's necessarily still where we want to initially go initially. I think John's been doing a lot of work with Control Point, and while they don't necessarily have letters after their name, a lot of times the vendor of your HVAC system knows as much or more than any engineer you're going to bring in. So I think I'd like to see that play out a little bit before I necessarily came to you and said to go out and spend $25,000 on an airflow study.
Can I
That's
ask?
my opinion.
Can I just ask about the study? Is that something that could be paid for by some of this COVID grant money?
It could be paid for by the coronavirus relief fund. It certainly would qualify under that.
Okay. And I'm speaking just for myself, and the rest of the committee can speak to it too. I think I agree. I think everything that you said that you and John are working on is all the right things that we need to do. I'm leaning towards asking to go ahead and do the study because I think it gives everyone that walks in the building confidence that we've done the right thing, or that, as far as ventilation, we're on the right track. So and again, I'll let the rest of the committee speak to that, but it would be my recommendation that we go ahead and try to use some of this COVID relief money to go forward with this ventilation study, so we can give confidence to everyone that walks in that what you guys are doing is working, and it's safe as far as ventilation to be in the building. But I'll open it up. Does anyone else in the committee want to chime in?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I concur that I think this is necessary. We've now brought it this far. I think not taking the next step in doing the study, I think we need to do it for either peace of mind, but also to map out next steps if there are additional steps that we can take, because clearly the purchase and installation of a new system that is in the tens of millions of dollars is not feasible in the immediate future. It's something that we have to think about. It's something that's important. And I know they're separate and distinct, but almost all of the problems go away with the new system. We're not going to be able to do a new system anytime soon. So we need to check in to make sure what John and his crew and Terry have been working on. Is there more that we could do? Are there other things that we could do industry standard that could help us improve the air in the building? So I support the study. I don't know where we can find the money at this time to pay for it ahead of COVID money, but I think we should effort whatever we can to find money to do this study. And then it clearly is a COVID related expense. I can't believe we'd be the only district in the Commonwealth engaging in this type of study. I support it, Terry.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else in the community? So Terry, I guess I'm not sure what the motion is then.
Well, I think the motion would be, and I'd rather not name a vendor because we might, there's another vendor who's worked with the district we might reach out to as well, but would be a motion to engage a vendor for an airflow study not to exceed $25,000.
And I guess before anyone makes that motion, I just want to make it clear that funding for this, we need to look at outside sources, right? I mean, that's the only.
Yes, you could actually refer to the Coronavirus Relief Fund.
Okay. Does anyone want to take that motion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to authorize the business manager and operations manager to operations director to contract with the vendor not to exceed $25,000 to do a ventilation study of the middle high school.
That's fine.
Second.
Do you want something?
No,
else?
that's fine.
Frank?
That
Okay.
works. That works for me.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Who's second?
Denise did.
Okay, and it's to authorize Terry and John to contract with a vendor not to exceed 25,000 to do a ventilation study, correct?
Right.
Of the middle school, high
At the
school.
middle high school.
The middle high school.
With an alternate funding source too, right?
Yeah, we referred to the Coronavirus Relief Fund.
Okay.
I'll
You-
work with you on that, Jody.
Okay, so does that have to be on the motion?
And that was that was the intent. We had talked about it right before. I mean, we can do it if,
Should the motion state though that the money needs to come from there?
Steve, want to do it again?
I
Just do
do. Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to authorize the business manager and the operations director to contract with a vendor not to exceed $25,000 with funding to come from COVID relief funding. There's a lot of funding in there. To do a ventilation study of the middle school, high school.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Nancy, you are up with the superintendent's report.
Actually, and part of this is still Mr. Wigan because he has a brief memo outlining the coronavirus relief grant program that we have access to,
Right.
and an update on our state funding and Chapter 70 funding.
She just loves my voice. So let's start with the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is what CVRF stands for. Most people think of it as the $255 per student, which works out for the Millis Public Schools as $243,900. And there's a number of different categories, but building services is in fact one of them, which is why that is one of the things we can fund. And just to quickly go through the process that we've been going through, is we've had one administrative team meeting where we did kind of a brainstorming session. Since that time, we've had a couple of, I'll call them breakout sessions, where I've met with individual administrators. So we're getting to the point of we're trying to get that narrowed down. I need to file the application by the 31st. So I'm not quite sure when your next meeting will be, but the target date would be, we would probably want to give you an idea of what we'd be applying for, obviously before that date, so that you get an understanding of what is going into that grant. I don't know that, again, typically there are grants, federal grants all the time that we apply for that I don't know that we necessarily run by you, but this is a little different. So I think we were thinking that we'd probably want to give you a heads up on the types of things we were looking at and why we were looking at them.
That makes sense. We can schedule a meeting before that.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conrad?
Mr. Wigan, I just want to confirm the way that this funding is scheduled to come in is this coming directly to the school fund, like school choice or other revolving, or is this going to the town general fund?
No, this fund will come directly to the school district. There is
Okay.
a separate fund, which we are also participating in, which is 750 odd thousand dollars that is coming to the town, but we are also participating in that grant. A lot of the PPE, for example, that
Mhm.
we have purchased, both in the last fiscal year and in this fiscal year, is actually going to be paid for under that town grant, if you will.
Okay.
So there's two separate pots of money right now. This one is more focused on educational issues. The town one is in some respects, the town one is a little broader. In some respects, it's a little narrower as to the types of things you can put into it.
I just want to make sure if there's funding that's going to basically the town general fund, that we at least acknowledge that we probably should only plan on using about 65% of that.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
this is a direct school grant.
Okay.
Will be treated that way. The other grant, frankly, that's probably about what we're getting of the other grant, Mark. Assuming all the expenditures work out, it's CARES / MEMA grant,
Okay.
and that we're getting about 65% of that grant.
Okay. Madam Chair, just one other question. I know when we had the presentation last week, there were multiple things, talked about as what we would need in order to make things work, such as, potentially up to 4, kind of floating staff, additional bus drivers, additional van.
Yep.
I would think that those would be the first things that we targeted in this.
Yeah, though again, it's been an evolving, it's been an evolution. For example, I don't think, because we've had some good news on bus 21, that we need to look at a big bus. And quite frankly, we wouldn't be able to get one in time if we wanted one. So we're going to proceed with the repairs that you originally authorized before the pandemic hit, because we have guarantees from the state that they will inspect it, and actually, if we keep up the repairs, they'll continue to keep it inspected probably for at least 2 years. So that's been some good news there. We've been looking at the van runs. We're cautiously optimistic that we can deal with all the van runs we need with the existing van fleet. Not to say we don't necessarily need to replace a van, but we'd be okay if we didn't replace one. I don't think we're going to need an additional one. Now, again, I may contact you at the next meeting and say I lied to you, and I actually need to propose a van. But at the moment, we think we're okay. In the sense of drivers, actually, we've done a pretty good job recruiting drivers. So we're looking pretty good there at the moment. Sandy's done a really nice job at interviewing drivers and starting a training program. We're down a trainer right now, so that hurt us a little bit, but that's and that's due to an injury. But we'll get through that. So, but there are some other things. I think there's been kind of a shift a little bit where there probably be a little bit more technology. For example, we will probably look at doing a district-wide Zoom for a year, because that gives us a great deal of flexibility for um, the remote learning, for remote meetings, for everything, to have the full Monty, as it were, um, for Zoom, rather than the kind of free education thing that they've been touting thus far.
All right, thank you.
So was that, so I guess the action items for us, Terry, is just when you guys are ready with that list, that we'll
Right.
coordinate a meeting time.
We'll come to you. Again, it should be either at your next meeting, or again, we may, depending on where we are, we might need to call you together, towards somewhat before, so that I can get the filing in.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Nancy, did you have anything else?
And yeah, well, along with that, Terry has a memo about our Chapter 70 funding currently, and what the state has committed to for the next 3 months. And it is less. So I'll let Terry speak to that. And we have to, that's what we'll bring to the committee as well at the next meeting, is preliminarily where we will cut the budget to make up this deficit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I certainly understand why the legislature is doing a 3-month budget. When I was in the legislature, if I were faced with this, I'd probably have done the same thing, having been on my state's appropriations committee. But having said that, if you extrapolate it out, it looks like if they kept at that pace, we'd end up being about, I think it was $87,486 shy of what we had approved as a budget in June. Not the worst thing in the world. I'm sure there are other school districts that are far worse off, but nonetheless, it is less money than we had budgeted. And so Nancy's right. We're right now, we've been talking about different options and different things. Some of them have fortunately been kind of natural things we think we'll be able to do. Others, may not be, quite so natural, but we'll figure it out, and we'll come to you with a plan for, accounting for that $87,000.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay, so next on the agenda is chairman's report. I have a little statement from the school committee that I'm going to read, and then, I know that the folks that are on YouTube, if you have questions, we're going to take a look at that, and we'll give everyone an opportunity to answer questions that are relevant to, the action items or the, any questions that you guys have. So that being said, so I'm going to start off, I want to take a couple minutes to clarify the vote we took last week. So per the state, all school districts needed to present 3 plans. Excuse me, an all-in plan, a hybrid plan, and a full remote plan. The school committee needed to adopt one of those plans that would dictate how the school would lock in Millis in September. So I just wanted to clarify that we voted to adopt the full remote, but we did have to present, and we did present to the state, which is due tomorrow, all 3 plans. So last week, the recommendation from the superintendent was to start with a hybrid model. After almost 4 hours of thoughtful conversation and questions, the school committee voted to start full remote. This doesn't mean we don't have a hybrid plan. As we stated last week, there are some unanswered questions around logistics and health and safety that we just need some time to work through. So no, we're not waiting for the plan to be perfect. The outstanding issues are important enough that we need to delay our hybrid by just a few weeks. So we've committed to take a look at this after Columbus Day, which Steve is October what? 12th?
Well,
Yeah, the 12th.
12.
Thank you. I just didn't want to say the wrong day. Please be assured that we have looked at all options, including adding outdoor spaces. To pivot now is not only logistically impossible, open meeting laws state that we can't take a new vote unless it's posted on the agenda, which needs to be sent in town hall in 48 hours in advance. So our vote is locked in. I really, truly wish this was as easy as a color on a map. The fact is that there's a million details that have to be worked out. Schools have been given little to no guidance or funding to make this happen safely and in the time given. So I don't know if you've all have seen, the superintendent in Situate wrote a really good open letter to the governor. Excuse me, I'm just gonna take a sip of water. So I'm not gonna read all of it, but I encourage you guys, so again, the superintendent of Situate, Massachusetts, you can easily search the internet or Facebook or whatever and find it. There's one part of it that I'm going to read you. It's right in the middle. So again, go read the whole thing. But his letter states, excuse me, we have 3 weeks before teachers show up to our schools, and the governor's frequent televised press conferences are absent the commissioner of education. Wouldn't it be a good time? Wouldn't it be a good time for the governor to have weekly, if not daily, updates on his vision for education alongside the commissioner to put us all at ease and to unify us around one message? It is not too late for us to push back and start holding our governor accountable. My plea is the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, in unison with our members, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and our local communities, get back on our horse and hold the governor accountable. Make him, like us, answer the tough questions. Where's your plan for schools? Are teachers and support staff essential? And what are your policies around returning to work? What are your policies to support your philosophy that we should reopen schools? What are you doing for our educators who return to school without daycare? When you make decisions restricting phase implementation, have you thought about the impact and contradictory message it's sending to superintendents currently in negotiations to follow your lead to open the schools? When you reduce outdoor gatherings from 100 to 50, have you thought of the impact that has on our plans to have outdoor learning? When you only allow gatherings of 25 indoors, how can you expect to fill schools with hundreds? Why aren't you and the commissioner meeting daily and publicly supporting our superintendents? What is your scientific metric for when we should open or close our schools? I feel the superintendents, along with our school committees, have been thrown into shark-infested waters, and with each declaration by the governor that restricts advancements of the phases, excuse me, or contradicts his directive to open schools, akin to throwing chum in the water. Where's his accountability? Ben Franklin once said, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. So again, that's just the middle part of the letter, but I encourage you, it just really resonated with the committee and what we're going through as a school district and as a town. So I encourage you guys to go look at it. So that being said, I do want to open it up because I do acknowledge that there's some people on our YouTube, and I don't have it, so I'm going to defer to one of the other committee members. If there's questions pertaining our back to school plan or anything that we talked about tonight, let's go ahead and take those.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes, Robin.
I think that I saw a question on here at one point, I can't find it quickly, about kindergarten, and we talked about that earlier this evening. So I just wanted to circle back to that real quick about parents choosing a half day or full day, and then are they kind of set in that half day? If we go into hybrid, will they still be in that half day? Or will they have the opportunity to switch to full day? What is like the plan for that? Or your thoughts on how that works, Nancy? Do you want them to choose and sort of be done with it while we're in this remote phase, or can they switch to a in-person? Or sorry, not in person. Can they switch to like a full day from a half day if we go more in school? I guess is the question.
So that will be determined somewhat by the interest in the half day and the interest in the full day. One of the memos that we wrote last week that we did not, that we pulled out of the packet until we have more information and we'll need to address at the next school committee meeting, is whether or not we need to add staff to provide a half-day program that's separate. In the past, our half-day students have been integrated, a few in each full-day classroom, and we believe that interest in solely the half-day program will go up because remote is more difficult for kindergarten and young students. And so we did get some feedback, and teachers are working hard to make sure there is more effective remote program provided for the full day kindergarten students. And there will be information coming out from the principal regarding, and already has been some information sent out regarding what the differences between a full day and a half day program are. So what we will be looking at is whether there are sufficient numbers to have a separate half day program, and whether that will require more staffing, or whether it's actually just reassigning one of the teachers in the full day program. If there are enough students, it'd be 2 half-day sessions. So we're gathering that information. We're doing a specific survey only for kindergarten parents with information and the details on what those 2 programs will look like. And we'll be able to go forward. The problem then is class sizes will be established and cohorts set. And so to have a lot of movement will be difficult to go from one class and one cohort of kids into another class. It may not be possible because of class sizes. So we'll take a look at that. We'll ask parents to make the commitment that they can for now, for the foreseeable future, the term or the semester. And we understand that circumstances do change, but that it would be problematic to have kids moving a lot of movement due to just individual circumstances.
Thank you. You guys see, is there any other questions? I'll pause and let them.
One of the questions was, maybe Terry can answer this. Can the CARES Act fund kindergarten?
No.
It's COVID related.
It
That would be nice.
Well, actually, I'm going to say there's one thing that might be COVID related that it will possibly fund, and that is an ion. I'm saying the description wrong, but it's basically a unit that disinfects manipulatives and toys that are used in like the preschool and kindergarten, and maybe even to some degree in the first grade level. And it will fund that type of machine. So I suppose technically there is limited funding for kindergarten, but it won't fund staff or curriculum or anything of that nature.
Well, I appreciate that, Terry. I think that they were looking to, I think a question was around tuition.
No, it won't fund tuition.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there was a question that was addressed to Mr. Conroy specifically, but I think it's probably to all of us, including myself. It was about the virtual high school or the all remote, and what was the reluctance to have the outside contractors teach. I will speak for myself. As I stated last week, I I do not support or endorse putting people who choose a remote program to be taught by either a computer program or people outside of the district. We have kids on 2 different tracks not being taught by the same teacher. I know it's all tied to the Common Core, but I thought it was important that we go back to this, not only this point, but to clarify and make sure that the administration and the superintendent were on the same page, is that the planning around remote should be Millis teachers doing the remote, and we're not going to, I don't think there was a desire to engage with the outside contractors or to engage those outside companies, even though they were approved by DESE. So I think that is a question that's shown up a couple times in the questions on YouTube.
So Steve, I just want to clarify, it's the families that choose remote when we're in a hybrid model, not
That's
just
correct.
remote, not the full remote plan.
No, well, it's the people, because the third option was someone who chose just to do remote from start to finish, from
Right.
first day to last day.
I just don't want any confusion that if we say we're going full remote, that our intent is to, what was on the table was when we're in a hybrid plan, if those families that still choose to go remote would go to this outside contractor, not when the whole district's in a remote plan.
Yes, and I don't support that.
Agreed.
Meaning I don't like the outside companies. I don't like the outside contractors. Yes, you're correct.
I would add too that the concern, or the big concern, or another concern was, if we do toggle back and forth, that I think that you said it, these kids are being taught separately, and they're following a different lesson plan. So it makes it impossible for them to toggle back and forth. So if you were to go full remote, if we were to go, when we were to go hybrid, you would be locked in, I think Nancy said, for a semester.
So,
I don't know if
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
we need to clarify 2 things on this. Our students have always used tech and VHS courses at the high school level, approximately 80 courses, 80 semester courses per year. It's a common model. And so Mr. Mulaney's working on the details of that, but I do want to make everybody aware that these 2 of the vendors that have been approved are 2 that we've used for probably over 10 years with VHS courses and tech courses that come to us. We get the tech courses due to our membership, so they are free of charge to the district. There was never any intent to charge parents. It would be a cost the district would bear. But also the VHS courses we get, and generally these are electives because Millis is a small high school. We provide these for, it expands the electives we can offer students by over 250 courses. So that's one thing. Mr. Mulaney is working with the faculty on a solution for this, and it will, I think, be available for the next school committee meeting. And it's, there are a lot of intricacies to it that he'll be able to flesh out for you at that time.
So I think
Go ahead, Steve.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Catalano.
I'm sorry. I think it's important that, 1 or 2 enrichment courses or elective courses that are not authored is completely different from a full-time curriculum that is for a full year. That's not what we're questioning. You've given us updates on that, and no one's ever pushed back on that. It's what we're talking about is a family who chose a full year remote session. This is, in my opinion, completely different. This is not a 1 or 2 off a semester. And I think it's also important that, and I will speak for myself, but we had this earlier, that we took a vote last week and Sue Ann came in with the program saying, you know, we really need to do this. I understood that. And I think we had a good discussion and compromise, but I hope that we're not going to lose time planning or just trying to justify using the outside contractors when everyone is going to be on remote for at least 5 weeks. So if we're planning for remote for everyone for 5 weeks, I hope we're not just going to rely on coming back in 2 weeks to try to say that this is why we should be using these outside companies. We're a week away from last week's vote where I wasn't the only one, but several people went on the record saying that they wanted Millis teachers to teach Millis students and that there wasn't a lot of support for the outside companies. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I was just going to make the initial same point that, you know, we've utilized those classes to add to our course offerings, and they're not the core class that everybody's going to take today. And the other part of it, the other issue with it, regardless of the quality, and it's not necessarily even people are going to choose to be remote all year. It's the idea that, and the concern about people choose to be remote for a period of time, but then want to come back. The disconnect between the curriculum that they were taught and the timing of the curriculum and what's being taught in the building, or when they come back to a hybrid model, personally, I don't want that to be a detriment to people choosing to come back into school because they've been on remote through a third-party vendor for a couple of months, and now, or 3 months or 4 months, and then all of a sudden it kind of doesn't make sense to come back and get off of that remote model because the way the courses are aligned, they're not aligned, and so it makes it difficult. So that's, for me, one of the big reasons why, you know, I'd like to see all aspects of it incorporated into the hybrid model, and even for those who choose remote during hybrid, that our Millis classes have a mechanism for allowing that. I mean, my belief would be what we're really talking about is 2 days, because even in a hybrid model, every student is home for 3 days. So it's getting, for students who choose to be hybrid, full remote during the hybrid session, it's incorporating them into live or even video class or video instructions for 2 of the 5 days. So that's.
And
I'm sorry.
I
Go
would-
ahead, Nancy.
I would agree. I think, you know, and we all know that our Millis teachers are very highly qualified. And as I mentioned, Mr. Mulaney's working with his staff. This is one aspect also that will be part of the memorandum of agreement. It has to be negotiated. So, you know, that is a working condition that is covered in the memorandum of agreement that we're, you know, starting to dialogue with the teachers union about. So, but I agree, they are very high quality instructors.
Thank you, Nancy.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Gibbons.
So I would just agree with the statements that both Mr. Catalano and Mr. Conroy have said. And the only thing I would add would also be sort of the sense of community for those students that opt for a remote model for whatever reason that they choose to. Having them be part of the Millis community with their classmates in a virtually support, I think is very important. One of the things that we've heard quite a bit about is the social emotional impact of the pandemic and the trickle-down effect that it's having with students through education in whatever model is being supported. Just another reason why I agree with Mr. Catalano, Mr. Conroy. I think all of us had said it at one point or another, as they both mentioned last week, that I'm hopeful that we'll come up with a solution that allows the students to be a virtual part of an in-person taught by Millis Public School staff member.
Thank you. Robin, any other questions that you can see there?
One of the is when do you expect to have more details about the remote curriculum and schedules for CFB families?
Nancy, can you take that one?
Yeah. That also will come out in the next week or two with the, and again, it depends on what the interest level is. If we have 2 students per grade level, it's a different model than if we have 15 per or 18 per grade level.
No, we're all going remote, right? Like, what is the remote curriculum or schedule for Clyde Brown? They just want to know what the Clyde Brown remote looks like.
Oh, okay. For the first month of school.
Yeah, I think that's what this question is asking.
So our elementary principal has that ready to go out to families, the schedule, and I believe the middle school as well. And she just had to take a couple vacation days to take her son to college. So next week I would anticipate.
Thank you.
There's another question that says, I think we talked about this already. Are you planning on still charging full day kindergarten students when even a hybrid model is only half day time?
We talked about that and we voted on it. So the answer to that is if you choose full day kindergarten, a full remote day will be offered and scheduled. If you choose half day, then obviously you wouldn't be charged. But yes, if you go ahead, if you go forward with full day kindergarten, with the exception of September, the tuition is the same. Anything else, guys? No?
There are questions about the principals presented the pie chart showing that most people wanted hybrid, and why was this not given more consideration? I just want to throw that out there that we've sort of talked about this already.
Yeah. So I think we've addressed this a few times, and there's been feedback that we've gotten on both sides. But I think a majority of the Millis community, that was a point of view and a snapshot in time at that time. I think that a lot has changed since then. So I think it's obviously things are changing every day, and new guidelines are coming out every day. And I just saw something this, sports guidelines and having to keep kids 6 feet apart while playing lacrosse, and so like things are constantly evolving. So that was before the plan was presented, and parents didn't know what that day would look like in school. So again, I'm not saying that everyone would have changed their mind because of that, but I think that was just a metric taken at a point in time.
There's one more question about what the high school is going to look like this time, if it would be different than the spring. We talked about this in our last meeting when Principal Mulaney talked about what the schedule would look like, but they wanted to know if you had math at 8 and science at 9, would you have Zoom for those teachers in those times? And I think that schedule will be coming out just like the CFB one. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy.
That's correct. And the parent survey will go out again next week as well.
Okay. Okay, so thank you everyone for your questions and for hanging in for a few hours here with us. So that is the end of the chairman's report. Subcommittee reports. Denise, do we have any updates on the ESBC?
I don't. Nancy or Terry, I don't know if you have any.
I think
I do not.
Okay.
I think John can maybe update us. The radon mitigation system work is occurring.
Okay. That's good. Okay, nothing in old or new business correspondence. We don't have anything. So I think that for open session, we're good. We are going to adjourn to executive session to talk about to get an update on our superintendent search.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Conroy.
I would make a motion that we adjourn from open session to move to executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations for union and non-union personnel, as well as a discussion regarding the superintendent search.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I believe I need to take a roll call vote for
Mr.
this.
Conroy.
Robin Briggs,
I would
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
before we go, I just wanted to make sure that there were no last minute questions in the YouTube because, you know, I'm surprised because this morning there was a little show and tell down at Town Field about outdoor classrooms, and there were people involved who wanted to educate us on potential options. And I'm just surprised that there was a tremendous amount of discussion on Facebook, and they wanted to use this opportunity to educate the school committee and the administration. So before we closed off of open session, I wanted to make sure any of those organizers of the event were not lingering in the YouTube because they put a lot of time and effort into it. And I'd be remiss not to give them their opportunity to come into a meeting and actually discuss it in open monitoring. But I definitely would like to give those opportunity if they're out there.
I don't see anything on the YouTube chat about that.
That is surprising, disappointing and surprising, but okay, I'm sorry, I held up the vote.
It's all good.
The only thing says, who do we contact for questions? And Nancy, do they have them contact you?
Yes. On our website under Millis Updates, we have a frequently asked questions document. There's a lot of information there, and we try to, after every meeting, take the questions that have been asked in the YouTube and address them in the frequently asked questions. If it's a specific question for schedule, school building, you can email or call the principals. And if it's, you know, of a more general nature, feel free to contact me. But we do try to read through these and make sure we're answering as many questions as possible. And, you know, each week we're going to be able to get more detailed information out to parents. So next week, I would anticipate that you'll be getting more and more detailed information. If it doesn't contain something that is concern, feel free to reach out to the principal or to me.
Thank you. All right. Any last chance? All right, so we have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. I do need to take a roll call vote. Robin Briggs. Stephen Catalano.
Yes.
Mark Conroy.
yes.
Denise Gibbons.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.